Imagine a young woman stepping onto the throne of England, her crown heavy with the weight of a fractured nation, her heart scarred by a childhood of betrayal and loss. This is Elizabeth I, a queen whose life was a masterclass in survival, cunning, and sheer brilliance. Born into a world that didn't want her, she defied the odds to forge a golden age, outsmarting enemies, charming allies, and crafting a legend that still dazzles us today. Her story isn't just history, it's a gripping saga of power, love, and sacrifice. Let's dive into the wild ride of Elizabeth's life, weaving in fresh details from trusted sources like historians, archives, and Wikipedia to make it pop while keeping every bit of her tale intact. Buckle up, this is going to be epic. Elizabeth was born on September 7, 1533 to King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Her arrival was a letdown for Henry, who was desperate for a male heir to secure his Tudor dynasty. According to historian Alison Weir, the court's disappointment was palpable. Henry had upended England's religious order to marry Anne, and all he got was a girl. Things got worse when Anne was executed in 1536, accused of adultery, incest, and treason. Charges most historians like David Starkey call fabricated to get her out of the way. At just 2.5, Elizabeth was declared illegitimate, stripped of her title as princess, and sent to live in near poverty at Hatfield House. Imagine a toddler royal, once pampered, now scraping by with outdated clothes and a skeleton staff. Yet this rough start shaped her. Elizabeth's early years taught her to be tough, watchful, and fiercely independent. Despite the hardship, Elizabeth's fortunes shifted when her half-brother Edward was born in 1537 to Jane Seymour, Henry's third wife. Edward's birth brought Elizabeth back into the fold, and she was gradually reintegrated into court life. Her education was a game-changer. Tutored by brilliant scholars like Roger Ascham, she mastered 5 languages, including Greek and Dutch, and devoured classical texts. Ascham marveled at her intellect, calling her mind exempt from female weakness. But it wasn't just book smarts. Elizabeth learned a brutal lesson from her mother's fate and the revolving door of Henry's wives. Marriage was a trap. Watching her stepmothers like Catherine Howard meet grim ends, she internalized a mantra that would define her life: stay single, stay safe. Living with her stepmother Catherine Parr and Parr's new husband Thomas Seymour brought more drama. Seymour, a charming but reckless noble, behaved inappropriately, sneaking into Elizabeth's room and engaging in playful but creepy antics like slapping her while she was in her nightgown. Historian Susan Brigden notes this left Elizabeth wary of men's intentions, sharpening her instincts for self-preservation. When Seymour was later executed for treason, Elizabeth, barely a teenager, faced scrutiny but kept her cool, learning to navigate the deadly game of Tudor politics. When Henry VIII died in 1547, 9-year-old Edward VI took the throne. Elizabeth, now 13, kept a low profile, focusing on her studies and building a bond with her bookish half-brother. Edward was a hardcore Protestant, leaning into radical Calvinist ideas, but Elizabeth was more pragmatic, favoring a moderate Protestantism that would later define her reign. In 1553, Edward's health failed, and a plot emerged to bypass Elizabeth and her Catholic half-sister Mary, crowning Lady Jane Grey instead. The scheme flopped. Jane ruled for 9 days before Mary rallied support and claimed the throne. Elizabeth, ever strategic, rode into London beside Mary, signaling loyalty. According to the National Archives, this public show of unity masked Elizabeth's growing caution. Mary's Catholic zeal was about to make life tricky. Mary's reign was a roller coaster for Elizabeth. As a Protestant and Mary's heir, Elizabeth became a lightning rod for discontented nobles. In 1554, Thomas Wyatt's rebellion against Mary's plan to marry Spain's Philip II put Elizabeth in the crosshairs. Though she had no part in it, she was hauled to the Tower of London, where traitors often met their end. Imagine the 20-year-old Elizabeth locked in a damp cell, knowing one wrong move could mean the block. She swore her innocence, and with no hard evidence, Mary released her to house arrest. Tensions spiked again when Mary, desperate for an heir, believed she was pregnant twice. Both were false pregnancies, a mix of wishful thinking and possible medical issues, per historian Linda Porter. Elizabeth remained the heir, a constant reminder of Mary's failures. During this time, Elizabeth grew close to Robert Dudley, a dashing noble who'd later become her lifelong confidant and rumored love. Their bond, rooted in shared imprisonment under Mary, sparked gossip that never quite died. Mary died on November 17, 1558, and at 25, Elizabeth became queen. England was a mess, broke, divided by religion, and surrounded by hostile powers like Spain and France. Elizabeth hit the ground running, tackling the religious quagmire first. She played it coy, keeping her plans vague to avoid alienating Catholics or Protestants. By 1559, she rolled out the Elizabethan religious settlement, a masterstroke of compromise. The Act of Uniformity revived the 1549 Book of Common Prayer, but tweaked it to be less offensive to Catholics, allowing traditional vestments and symbols in churches. Wikipedia notes this middle path infuriated Puritans, the hardline Protestants, who wanted a stripped-down faith, but it kept the peace. Unlike France or Spain, where religious wars raged, Elizabeth's England saw minimal bloodshed. Her motto, "I see and keep silent," became her guiding star, letting her dodge dogmatic traps. Economically, Elizabeth inherited a train wreck from her father's reckless spending. With advisors like William Cecil, her right-hand man, and Thomas Gresham, a financial wizard, she pulled off a bold move, recalling debased coins and issuing new, trustworthy ones. This stabilized prices and boosted trade, laying the groundwork for prosperity. Gresham's law, bad money drives out good, came from this era, per the BBC's History Archives. Elizabeth also poured money into the Navy, building sleek, agile ships that could outmaneuver bulky Spanish galleons. Her thriftiness was legendary. She pinched pennies so hard, courtiers joked she'd reuse candle stubs. By the 1570s, England's finances were on solid ground, a feat that stunned Europe. The big question on everyone's mind was, who would Elizabeth marry? England needed an heir, but Elizabeth was a chess player, not a pawn. Suitors lined up: Archduke Charles of Austria, Philip II of Spain, even French princes, but she turned them all down. Mary Stuart, the Catholic Queen of Scots, was her closest rival for the throne, and marrying a foreign Catholic could tip the balance. Elizabeth flirted with Robert Dudley, now Earl of Leicester, but marriage rumors fizzled. Historians like Jane Dunn suggest she loved Dudley but feared giving any man power over her. Instead, she crafted the Virgin Queen persona, declaring she was wed to England. This wasn't just PR, it was a power move, letting her dodge alliances that could drag England into wars. Per the British Library, her courtly love games with suitors kept diplomats guessing, buying her time to strengthen her rule. Elizabeth I's appearance was meticulously crafted to embody her divine authority, becoming a cornerstone of her legend. In 1562, at the age of 29, she contracted smallpox, a near-fatal illness that left her with facial scars. To preserve the image of an infallible goddess-like monarch, Elizabeth turned to heavy makeup laced with lead and mercury, cosmetics that, while effective in concealing blemishes, gradually poisoned her skin, causing further damage. Her thinning hair, a consequence of aging, and possibly the smallpox ordeal, was hidden beneath elaborate wigs, often adorned with jewels, to project wealth and power. Her notorious sweet tooth, a luxury in an era when sugar was a status symbol, led to blackened, decaying teeth, a common affliction among the sugar-obsessed Elizabethan court, as historian Tracy Borman notes in The Private Lives of the Tudors. Despite these physical tolls, Elizabeth's charisma and sharp intellect captivated those around her. Official portraits, carefully controlled by the crown, depicted her as ageless and ethereal, adorned in opulent gowns embroidered with symbols of virginity and power, such as pearls and moons. These images, disseminated across England, reinforced her divine right to rule, portraying her not as a mere mortal, but as Gloriana, a quasi-mythical figure destined to lead. Elizabeth's personal vanity was strategic. She understood that her image was a political tool, especially as a female ruler in a patriarchal world. Courtiers and artists were expected to flatter her, and she banned unflattering depictions. Her wardrobe, numbering over 2,000 gowns by the end of her reign according to the Victoria and Albert Museum, was a spectacle of wealth and authority, with each outfit designed to dazzle foreign ambassadors and her own subjects. Yet beneath the facade, Elizabeth was frugal, reusing dresses and carefully managing her court's finances. This duality, public splendor paired with private pragmatism, defined her approach to queenship. Elizabeth's 44-year reign ignited a cultural explosion that laid the foundations of the English Renaissance. Her court was a vibrant hub of intellectual and artistic activity, attracting some of the greatest literary minds of the era. William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Ben Jonson produced works that not only entertained but also grappled with themes of power, identity, and human nature, shaping English literature for centuries. Shakespeare's plays, performed in venues like the Curtain and later the Globe Theatre, built in 1599 just after Elizabeth's reign, owed their flourishing to the Queen's patronage of the arts. Marlowe's Dr. Faustus and Jonson's Every Man in His Humor captivated audiences with their bold exploration of ambition and morality. Elizabeth herself was a poet and scholar, fluent in Latin, French, and Italian, and her love of learning fostered an environment where creativity thrived. Beyond literature, Elizabeth's reign saw advancements in music, architecture, and the visual arts. Composers like Thomas Tallis and William Byrd crafted sacred and secular music that filled cathedrals and courtly banquets. The Queen's progresses, lavish tours through England, showcased her accessibility and inspired local pageants, masques, and performances. These events, often hosted by nobles eager to impress, spurred architectural innovation, with grand estates like Hardwicke Hall reflecting the era's prosperity. Elizabeth's support for the arts was not merely aesthetic, it was political, reinforcing her image as a cultured, benevolent ruler while uniting a nation fractured by religious strife. Elizabeth's reign transformed England from a peripheral kingdom into a maritime powerhouse, setting the stage for its future empire. Her navy, bolstered by privateers and explorers, challenged the dominance of Catholic Spain and Portugal. Sir Francis Drake, a swashbuckling hero to the English and a pirate to the Spanish, circumnavigated the globe between 1577 and 1580, returning with treasures plundered from Spanish ships. According to the BBC History, Drake's raids on Spanish ports and vessels brought immense wealth to Elizabeth's treasury, funding naval expansion and her ambitious foreign policy. His 1587 raid on Cadiz, where he burned over 30 Spanish ships, delayed the Spanish Armada and earned him the fearsome nickname El Draque, the Dragon, among Spain's sailors. Sir Walter Raleigh, another of Elizabeth's favored adventurers, dreamed of establishing English colonies in the New World. His attempts to settle Roanoke in the 1580s, though ultimately unsuccessful, planted the seeds for England's colonial ambitions. These ventures, coupled with John Hawkins' innovations in ship design, sleeker, faster vessels that outmaneuvered Spain's lumbering galleons, strengthened England's naval prowess. By the end of Elizabeth's reign, England's maritime confidence had laid the groundwork for the British Empire, even if the full fruits of colonization would only emerge under her successors. Elizabeth's reign was perpetually shadowed by religious and political threats, with Catholic Europe viewing her Protestant rule as illegitimate. Spain, under King Philip II, emerged as her greatest adversary, their rivalry fueled by England's support for Dutch rebels fighting Spanish rule in the Netherlands. The 1570 excommunication of Elizabeth by Pope Pius V, who declared her a heretic and absolved Catholics of loyalty to her, intensified the danger, effectively sanctioning assassination attempts. The 1569 Northern Rebellion, a Catholic uprising in England's north, aimed to depose Elizabeth and install Mary, Queen of Scots, her Catholic cousin, on the throne. Though the rebellion was swiftly crushed, it underscored the fragility of Elizabeth's position. Mary, Queen of Scots, was Elizabeth's most persistent challenge. Fleeing Scotland in 1568 after a series of scandals, including the murder of her second husband, Lord Darnley, and her hasty marriage to the prime suspect, the Earl of Bothwell, Mary sought refuge in England. Her arrival was a political nightmare for Elizabeth. As a Catholic with a legitimate claim to the English throne, descended from Henry VII, Mary was a rallying point for disaffected Catholics. Elizabeth, wary of her cousin's ambitions, placed her under house arrest for 19 years, moving her between fortified castles like Sheffield and Chatsworth. Mary's presence fueled conspiracies, including the 1571 Ridolfi plot, which sought to assassinate Elizabeth and spark a Spanish invasion. Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spy master, built a sophisticated intelligence network to counter these threats. According to historian Stephen Alford in The Watchers, Walsingham's spies infiltrated Catholic circles across Europe, intercepting coded messages and uncovering plots with ruthless efficiency. In 1586, Walsingham orchestrated the Babington Plot, a sting operation that sealed Mary's fate. His agents intercepted letters in which Mary endorsed a conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and seize the throne. The evidence was irrefutable, but Elizabeth hesitated. Executing an anointed queen risked setting a dangerous precedent and provoking Catholic retaliation. After months of deliberation, she signed Mary's death warrant. On February 8, 1587, Mary was beheaded at Fotheringhay Castle, dressed in crimson to symbolize martyrdom. Her execution, described in vivid detail by eyewitnesses, was a grisly affair. Her small dog emerged from her skirts, soaked in blood, as the executioner required multiple blows to sever her head. Elizabeth, devastated, claimed the execution was carried out against her wishes, even imprisoning the official who delivered the warrant. Historians like Alison Weir, in The Life of Elizabeth Thurn, debate whether her distress was genuine or a calculated performance to deflect blame. Regardless, Mary's death removed a potent threat but haunted Elizabeth, a stark reminder of the brutal realities of her rule. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 was the pinnacle of Elizabeth's reign, a victory that cemented England's emergence as a global power. Philip II, enraged by England's support for the Dutch and Drake's raids, launched a colossal fleet of 130 ships, carrying 30,000 men to invade England and restore Catholic rule. Elizabeth's navy, commanded by Lord Charles Howard and Francis Drake, was outnumbered but agile. Drake's 1587 raid on Cadiz had already disrupted Spain's preparations, destroying ships and supplies. When the Armada entered the English Channel in July 1588, England's smaller, faster ships harassed the Spanish formation, avoiding direct confrontation with the heavily armed galleons. The turning point came at Gravelines, where English fireships, vessels packed with combustibles and set ablaze, scattered the Armada's tightly packed crescent formation. A sudden storm, later dubbed the Protestant Wind by English chroniclers, battered the Spanish fleet, driving many ships onto the rocky coasts of Scotland and Ireland. According to the National Maritime Museum, fewer than 40 of the 130 Spanish ships returned home, with thousands of sailors lost to battle, disease, or shipwreck. Elizabeth's iconic speech at Tilbury, delivered to her assembled troops as the Armada approached, captured her defiance. "I know I have the body but of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." Though she never fought in battle, the speech, preserved in letters and chronicles, immortalized her as a warrior queen. The Armada's defeat was a psychological and strategic triumph. It shattered Spain's aura of invincibility and boosted English confidence, proving that a small Protestant nation could defy Europe's Catholic superpower. The victory also secured Elizabeth's throne, silencing Catholic plotters and solidifying her divine mandate. The 1590s, often called Elizabeth's second reign, were marked by mounting difficulties. Costly wars in the Netherlands and France, aimed at curbing Spanish influence, strained England's finances. The 9 Years' War in Ireland, 1594 to 1603, led by Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, proved particularly draining, with Irish rebels employing guerrilla tactics against English forces. Poor harvests, exacerbated by bad weather, led to food shortages and skyrocketing prices, fueling discontent among the common people. High taxes to fund military campaigns sparked grumbling, and the lack of a clear successor kept the court on edge. The deaths of Elizabeth's trusted advisors, William Cecil in 1598, Francis Walsingham in 1590, left a void filled by younger, ambitious courtiers like Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex. Essex, once a favorite of the Queen, proved a liability. His military campaigns, including a disastrous expedition to Ireland in 1599, failed spectacularly, and his arrogance alienated the court. In 1601, desperate to regain favor, Essex launched a rebellion in London, hoping to seize the Queen and force her to dismiss his rivals. The uprising fizzled, and Elizabeth, heartbroken but resolute, ordered his execution. According to Tracy Borman, Essex's betrayal was a personal blow, as Elizabeth had once doted on him, gifting him lucrative monopolies and courtly honors. As Elizabeth aged, her health declined. She suffered from depression, possibly triggered by the losses of Essex and her old guard, and her once vibrant energy waned. Yet she refused to name a successor publicly, fearing it would undermine her authority. Behind the scenes, Robert Cecil, William's son and her chief minister, orchestrated a smooth transition, corresponding secretly with James VI of Scotland, Mary Stuart's son. On March 24, 1603, Elizabeth died at Richmond Palace, aged 69. A ring found on her finger, now housed at the Victoria and Albert Museum, contained miniatures of herself and her mother, Anne Boleyn, a poignant reminder of the executed queen whose legacy shaped Elizabeth's life. Elizabeth I's reign was a transformative era that redefined England's place in the world. She inherited a divided, financially weak kingdom and left it a Protestant powerhouse with a formidable navy and a burgeoning cultural identity. Her delicate balancing of Catholic and Protestant factions prevented civil war, while her support for exploration and trade laid the foundations for the British Empire. The literary and artistic renaissance she fostered produced works that remain cornerstones of Western culture. Elizabeth's story is one of revolution. She proved that a woman could rule with unmatched authority, reshaping England and leaving a legacy that endures in its language, culture, and global influence. Her reign was not just a chapter in history, it was a golden age forged by a queen whose heart and stomach were indeed those of a king.